Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm Gitanjali Purkaistha from CLEAN. Thank you for joining us for this important webinar on carbon finance for livelihood today. So this webinar is part of CLEAN's monthly webinar series, an initiative we started last year to promote knowledge sharing and peer learning on emerging opportunities and challenges in the DRE and sustainable livelihood space. So today's topic, carbon finance, is generating a lot of curiosity, especially in the context of small-scale community-led projects. So many of you are eager to understand how carbon finance works, its potential for your initiatives, and the co-benefits it can bring to communities on the ground. And that is why we had also asked you to share your questions on carbon finance or the key concerns or topics that you would like to get addressed today. So we did receive some excellent questions, which have been thoughtfully organized into multiple sections for structured discussion. And we will start with those pre-submitted questions or topics to ensure that most of the common queries are covered upfront. And if time permits, we will also take up additional unanswered questions towards the end of the session. So before we dive in, a quick note on logistics. That this session is has been recorded and will be uploaded in our YouTube channel. You may please stay mute if not speaking, and the chat box, you can use it freely for your questions, and we will take all the questions at the end. So let's begin. To have some background and the context setting for today's discussion, I would like to invite Ms. Priyadarshini Karve, the CEO of CLEAN. Ma'am, please.
Thanks, Gitanjali. Based on the interest that we have received and looking at the audience also here, carbon financing seems to be something which everybody is eagerly trying to understand. And as the new systems are setting up now, both at the UNFCCC level and also within India, the whole carbon market and climate finance is a mechanism that emerged out of Kyoto Agreement. So once the Kyoto Agreement sort of ended and Paris Agreement set in, time has been spent at the international level to try and figure out what should be the rules of the carbon market going forward with Paris Agreement. And at the same time, some interesting developments have been happening within countries. So Indian government announced that we will be starting a within India carbon market a couple of years back. But there has been a lot of uncertainty or lack of understanding as to how exactly this is going to unfold and how it's going to benefit people. Now, right from the beginning, the whole idea behind the clean development mechanism was that money should flow from developed communities, one should say, to developing communities in order to help them cope with climate change and implement a clean developmental or low carbon developmental pathway. It didn't quite unfold that way under Kyoto Agreement, but there has always been an effort to try and bring this climate finance to the grassroots level initiatives. So as to bring in some level of fairness in the carbon market. And one of the pioneering groups which have been working in this sectors is FCF. So it's really great, Jasmeet, to have you here today to try and explain this sort of carbon market second edition in a way under Paris Agreement, and within India how this is likely to unfold, and particularly in how the grassroots level initiatives, how the vulnerable populations can benefit from this process. So I welcome you on behalf of Clean. I welcome all the audience members and thank everyone who has shared questions which will help structure this conversation. Let's go ahead and dive into this. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our lead speaker, Mr. Jasmeet Singh Bajaj, the founder and director of FCF India. A short bio about him. So Jasmeet brings over 15 years of experience in carbon markets, spanning advisory, auditing, trading, and project development. He has led more than 200 carbon projects across leading global standards like Plan Vivo, Gold standards, Fair Trade Climate standards, and Vera. He is also the co-author of Carbon Credit and Climate Change Nexus and holds an MBA in power management. His work is driven by a strong focus on ensuring that climate action directly benefits vulnerable communities in developing countries. We are looking forward to learning from his experience and understanding how carbon finance can be a practical opportunity for community organizations, livelihood actors, and ERD practitioners. Over to you, Mr. Jasmeet.
Thanks, Gitanjali, for the very flattery introduction, and Dr. Kave for setting up the context. I also have prepared few slides to present the way we are structuring the today's discussion. But I think this is a topic which was of great importance from 2 decades and still getting under you can say less deserving attention. So not limited to one particular webinar, there is a need of a round of such series of discussions around carbon finance, because we will not able to do justice within 1 hour, the complexities, the different layers, the different type of challenges it brings. So the objective is, if we are able to add very minuscule value addition to all the participants who are attending this session, that's I will consider that we have done the work. But this is more like a interactive session. We try to structure certain questions, but feel free to pose the questions in the chat in between and see how it goes. Let me share my screen, and please confirm once you are able to see this.
Yes, visible.
Okay. So the structure of the presentation is, I started with certain brief introduction about what we are doing as FCF India, and then diving into what exactly the carbon markets look like, and how we are addressing our approach of the solutioning, and then moving into the Q&A session. So it's not the Q&A session has been hosted in the last 15 minutes. It's going to start in next 10 minutes itself, but certain questions we have already received, as Gitanjali highlighted. So we are an organization. I personally work in the carbon markets from last 15 years. So I see previous era as well and this era. So all good, bad story. I was also very much part of that contributor to that previous carbon market. So the change what FCF India is bringing in last 15 years of experience, that we have started only focusing on the projects which are not only limited to a commercial value, but also a social value. So all the projects which we are doing exist in the rural and remote locations, contributing to the sustainable development. And it happened to be in the definition of high quality carbon credits, which is very strong in demand in the market. That everybody wanted to work with those communities which not only talks about carbon credits, but also talk about the livelihood, women empowerment, access to clean energy, access to clean drinking water, biodiversity benefits. So there are a lot of co-benefits. So our focus is working with the smallholder farmers in the global south, and designing, developing the interventions which is going to remove carbon from the atmosphere, like agroforestry, soil carbon. And these projects we certify and then sell it to the corporates for their targets. The broader level challenges, if I have to define where we are right now in the carbon markets, not specific to DRE or any particular one country, it's a global scenario. So I would categorize in four different segments. The first category is, though the carbon market is 15 or 20 years old, but still all the major supply of carbon credit coming is from large renewable energy based projects like big 100 megawatt or 1 gigawatt solar, wind, hydro, those kind of projects, which is at this scenario considered as low quality carbon credits. So if somebody say carbon credits are available in the market, yes, but high quality carbon credits are very limited in supply. So that is one challenge carbon market is facing, that buyer wanted to purchase the credits, the available credits are not considered as per their definition high quality. The second segment is the non-inclusive model and climate injustice. Carbon markets is not something uh, can be compared with any typical business model. If we are talking about AI or any tech venture or any food delivery, you can say entrepreneurship, it is very much bringing lot of value towards adaptation and mitigation practices. So till the time the projects are not very inclusive is in nature, means bottoms up approach, those kind of challenges right now persist, that a project is built by one particular corporate or buyer in a top down approach, and it is not actually addressing the requirements on the ground. Simple examples are distribution of a cook stove model, whether it's a tier highly efficient cook stoves, the availability of electricity is required there or not, availability of biomass, how people are dependent, access to fuel wood is there or not, but distribution. So it's more of like a implementing any energy intervention and not focusing on the inclusivity part of the project design. Limited carbon market knowledge is also one, because there is lot of negative publicity and media going on in this space, which uh, forces the guidelines needs to be updated on a very frequent manner. The way we calculate carbon, the way that we are assessing the eligibility, these are becoming, in a way it is good that it is keep updating and we are getting closer to the accuracy level, addressing the gaps, but it's also becoming challenging for any enterprise, specifically DRE enterprises, government bodies, private sector organizations, to keep a tab of those updates, which reduces the technical know-how of this industry, and also becoming one of the challenge. And the last but not the least is the low liquidity financial entry barriers. Everybody needs carbon credits, but the way the process is, if somebody starts a process 3 years back or 2 years back, then these credits are going to be generated, issued. So those upfront costs that somebody has to made an investment in first 1, 2, 3 years, put the processes in place, those entry barriers in terms of the financials are there. Everybody is here to purchase the credits like a over the counter commodity or a product, but nobody has actually invested, or very limited supply is invested 3, 4 years back in a good design, which also poses a question that somebody has to write a first check. We can talk about crores, millions of dollars, but the journey needs to start with first 100 rupees and 500 and 1000 that needs to be spent. Somebody has to take that risk. So that level of low liquidity in the initial stage very much exists. How we are trying to address or navigate these are we focus on carbon removal, which is categorized as one of the high quality carbon credits. We leverage tech and performance monitoring so that it can provide more accurate data sets to the buyers so that we can able to fetch better pricings. Uh, we go beyond carbon co-benefits drive projects, which is more inclusive in nature, that if carbon project implementation needs to add certain additional value chains. If we talk about planting mango trees, so apart from plantation of a mango tree, if we start focusing on the warehouse, their value chains, which is going to add additional cost, but it also makes more sustainable and a long term um, livelihood opportunities. So it's not limited to the capturing the carbon in trees, but very much also generating the livelihood for those communities over a period of next 2-3 decades. So those are the projects we focus, and we also provide upfront finance to kick off the project so that it becoming more lucrative opportunities for investors, that somebody has started and investing into the projects from their own sources. Yeah, so that was it about FCF, and the questions which we have categorized. Pardon us if we not able to capture any particular question, but we have created different segments. Um, uh, the total questions which we have received, that some are focusing on policy, some are on the costing side, some are on the accessibility, affordability part. So let's the first section is on awareness and capacity building. That we recognize the questions which was posed by the participants is more towards a curiosity that how I can access the carbon markets, if I'm doing, whether I'm eligible or not eligible. So it's before getting into the very technical know-how and all the jargons, there is a fair bit of gap towards the capacity building and awareness generation. It starts with the role of what is the when a DRE or any MSMEs are exploring this market, what type of role they are expecting, how many credit it can be generated. So in awareness generation, awareness and capacity building part, what I would like to address is DRE and MSMEs in most of the cases should not try to lead the project, carbon project, from the start without assessing the scale of the project which is it required. So we don't have like a thumb rule that if a DRE is supplying renewable energy access to 100 units or 500 units, so those parameters first needs to take into consideration that the role they would like to play is a implementing partner role, a project developer role. Project developer means who owns the project, who are upfront ready to receive the investments on the ground, how much accessibility area they can able to take into consideration. So all those part are very much take into consideration when we need to start the project. So what type of incentives they can expect. So a typical carbon credit has a cost of implementation, a cost of certification, a cost of monitoring. So which all cost they should able to address during the process, that should be well thought and checked before getting into those projects. Some of the questions which we received is on the DRE and livelihood solutions. So the challenges is towards their accessibility, the upfront cost, carbon registration methodologies, and DRE Article 6 and local benefit sharing mechanisms. So when we talk about for the DRE, I can talk for like very long details, but carbon credit is a process which is need to address two things. One is standardization and second is scale. When we talk about DRE, decentralized renewable energy solutions, we need to standardize that particular solution if we are aiming to address the, if we are aiming to go for carbon certification process and generate carbon credits. We need to talk about a standardized product which can be a megawatt. When we are talking about DRE, it's not on the application side, but how many electricity units we are talking about. So once we are able to address the scale of the project, the standardization of the project, then we can talk about we need 500 megawatt, 50 megawatt of 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 a different interventions on the ground. Carbon credits projects, the basic fundamentals start with the methodologies what they are going to apply. If we are generating electricity and supplying to the households, it's a different set of methodology which is going to take into consideration and different way of calculating the carbon credits. If we are supplying the same renewable energy to not to the households but to the rural enterprises for different livelihood opportunities, a different set of methodology is going to come into picture. I'll just want to like go a bit more in detail. When we are talking about a DRE, it is very much critical to assess the baseline. What this particular DRE is, you can say if DRE doesn't exist, what are the options for those interventions? What are the options exist in the absence of the DRE to execute the same level of activities? For an example, if we are not supplying DRE power to a handloom or some solar powered loom or a hospitals, then it is very much possible that the same power should be consumed by electricity, by the grid connectivity, or it can also happen to be in the remote rural locations, then it can be a DG power. So whether this is a case of a saving of electricity from the grids or saving of a diesel generation, all the carbon credits which is going to coming out from this process will be way different. So the methodology will be play a major role whichever we are talking about the DRE and the livelihood options. In terms of accessibility, how DRE can access the project, there are a good chunk of steps involved in the process. It's a process of more than 1 year if DRE would like to start the project and finding all the ticks and boxes in place while doing the assessment. Then once they start, they have to register their projects with certain set of registries, which we call gold standard, which we call Plan Vivo, Vera, and United Nations. And recently, Indian government is also coming up with their own set of guidelines to develop the carbon projects. So we will definitely talk about more on the guidelines in the coming slides. But accessibility part will involve those interventions to certify under a accredited standard, which is whether it a domestic or a international market. There is a upfront cost. Costs are also categorized in different buckets. One cost is cost of technical assistance. The technical assistance cover the cost of calculating the carbon emissions, preparing the reports, which I'm trying not to use the jargons. So reports like preparation of a detailed project report, how many installations, which particular locations, what were the baseline scenarios before intervening the DRE, what are the beneficiaries were consuming, whether it's a diesel or any other source of electricity, or if there is no supply, then what all options exist in during to switch to those beneficiaries to any other segment. So that will cover the cost of the technical assistance is one category. Then there is a second category of cost of auditing. Cost of auditing is a third party cost which is going to be charged by a accredited agencies who are coming to the field on checking whether all the implementation pieces are happening as per the guidelines of the carbon certification process or not. And then the third cost, which is need to be incurred by DRE or anyone who is initiating this carbon project, is the cost of the certification, which is charged by VERA and the registration bodies. So these three segments: technical assistance, auditing, and the certification bodies. So these three club together becoming a upfront cost. And for developing any carbon project, this cost is something coming around in the tune of 50 like 50 up to 50 lakhs rupees. What I can pose as one particular number, that if any uh, and anyone would like to start a carbon project in the DRE segment or any other category, approximately a 50 lakhs rupees of a budget, that's a bare bone budget which they have to take into consideration, which will not going to cover the cost of implementation on the ground of any installations. That will be going to be a separate cost. But accessing the carbon finance by MSME, this particular cost needs to take into consideration. Article 6 questions were also being posed. So Article 6 is a mechanism where one country is interacting with the other countries, that how they can supply or trade carbon credits generated by India to Japan. So Article 6 is a is a clause coming under Paris Agreement, which is a United Nations framework where countries agreed that we are going to support each other country towards their net zero transition. So India right now is negotiating with different countries. Japan, Singapore is among them. So once those policy level things will be addressed by the at a national level, then these benefits can be trickled down to the beneficiaries, or private sector or DREs might also be part of the process. Right now, Article 6 market is not operational in India. It is very much looking forward in the coming years based on the ongoing negotiations and discussions. But as of now, India has not delivered any Article 6 credits. There is a decent set of questions which were focusing on farmer and agriculture interventions, that how they can access the carbon finance. So the process of certification and registration is very much similar. However, the scale and the longevity of the projects are very much different if we are comparing to any DRE interventions when we compare to the agriculture interventions. Agriculture projects typically projects of managing the soil by using different organic farming, vermicomposting, planting more trees, whether it's a forestry, agroforestry, or a timber horticulture species, avoidance of methane in the rice cultivation fields. So all those projects are categorized in the agriculture interventions. And in the current landscape, agriculture projects are recognized, you can say, high in demand for multiple reasons. First, agriculture interventions, all carbon projects are designed where farmer is at the center stage, and there is additional co-benefits which is very much required to sustain the project. For an example, fixing the biodiversity, fixing the water tables in that particular region, fixing the ecological and restoration of the barren land areas, creating more job opportunities. So a lot of co-benefits are very much coming with these agriculture projects. But how these projects able to access carbon finance, and how it is different than what I have explained in my previous slide, where the DREs are focusing on. Um, First of all, when we talk about a solar powered microgrid projects, their longevity is in terms of generating the carbon credits in the current guidelines is 10 years. But when we talk about agriculture, tree plantations, their longevity is 30 to 40 years. The carbon credits generated by DRE players, DRE segments, it can easily generate carbon credits once their installations are fixed, which is very much in the control of the micro MSMEs based on the availability of land, based on the availability of resources and their implementation capacity. Within 2 to 3 years, they can ramp up and generate carbon credits. But when we talk about a soil carbon, agroforestry and tree plantations kind of activities, irrespective of the amount of resources and the bandwidth we are having, it takes at least a decade, 10 years to build a project which is where we can consider that there is a significant or a decent amount of credit start coming in, because as tree grow, it has a sequestration capacity and their capacity improve over a period of time, which is not the case in the DRE segments where we are installing the solar power plants in the rural locations, and the moment they are generating electricity, it starts generating the carbon credits in parallel. Whereas when we are talking about the agricultural regions, the longevity, and that is also one of the reason the credit generation cycle is 30 years old. And this also poses a question of how these agriculture interventions can attract or access the carbon finance. If any MSME or a farmer producer company or organization is implementing these interventions and they cannot wait for 10 years and keep investing, it's becoming um, uh, deal breaker for any entity who would like to consider their projects bootstrapped. However, in the current market situation, there are corporates, there are different financial institutions who are ready to invest upfront into these projects if we are able to justify the implementing partner is good. We have done all the carbon calculations in a very detailed and granular way. We have certain seed capital invested and there is a buyer. Buyer means there is some organization who is committing to purchase carbon credits, though those organization has not putting upfront any capital, but they are committing that if project is going to generate X number of credits, they are ready to purchase. So these kind of transactions right now in the Indian and international carbon markets are very popular, which we called offtake agreement. And the people in this room who are familiar with this space, they might aware that Microsoft has invested in a Madhya Pradesh based local NGO through a UK based firm. So Microsoft has actually investing upfront where the credits are going to be generated in next 10 years, 20 years or 30 years. So there are certain instances where agriculture based projects in the current landscape has attract decent amount of capital. I'm not talking about 10-20 crores. It is way significant amount of capital has been attracted and committed to these projects. And on the ground for the communities, this is not something they are looking forward as a carbon project. They are looking forward this as a development project, that this is going to generate livelihoods, address their soil carbon situation, reduce their chemical fertilizer expenses and improve the water table. So those becoming the more impact driven, you can say, expectations for the local communities, but the work started through the catalyst capital of carbon. I guess I covered most of the. Yes. So when we talk about upfront cost is a barrier, technical assistance, auditing certification is there, and talking about 50 lakhs rupees. So this is not the only challenge when we talk about that somebody who has a access to land or wanted to plant 1 million trees or a commitment in place. The organization who would like to drive and design the project has to address the variation of cost year on year basis, take into consideration the inflation. Think about, we are talking about creating a business model which has a longevity of 30 years, and you have to take into account the inflation. How much revenues this project is going to generate. If it is only dependent on the carbon revenues, then the market uncertainties come into picture. The corporate or the company who is ready to commit, are they committing for 30 years or 2-3 years? So those questions start coming into picture, that who is providing the commitment and the clarity when any company or any enterprise is starting the project. So cost of accreditation at that stage becoming a smaller challenge, that it's not a challenge of mobilizing 50 lakhs or 60-70 lakhs rupees. It is actually committing to a project for a 3 decades. And price variability, that how we can certain that a carbon credit price is a $10 or a $20 thing. It very much dependent if we are talking about compliance and voluntary. Compliance is somebody is putting a ruling. For an example, there is a guidance of CBAM, that any commodity like steel and any commodity which we are exporting to Europe, they have put a benchmarking on carbon. So if that particular company like Tata, Jindal, who are supplying steel, iron to the European nations, they have to keep their carbon emissions benchmarking in that level. So those becoming part of the compliance. So Tata and Jindal, such entities will start coming into the compliance mechanism and pushing and purchasing the credits, and which will going to drive the carbon pricing. Whereas when we are talking about a voluntary market, a company who is at their sense of responsibility, they have taken a pledge and they would like to move forward and becoming carbon neutral. For an example, Apple and Microsoft, these are the organizations who has committed to become carbon neutral by 2030. So it's not a compliance which is going to put in on their part. So when we are dealing with a company who is operating in the voluntary market, the situation of pricing uncertainty will be higher, because any day they can pull out from the contracts that we don't need carbon credits, and somebody has designed and developed these projects keeping in mind that it is a 30 years trajectory and it will keep on generating credits at a certain revenue. And that is why someone is giving the loan, someone is giving the financing upfront to develop these projects. But when we talk about a compliance and a ruling market, the stability will be much more, you can say, will be much more longer in those discussion. There was a question related to what are the parameters for determining the pricing of carbon credits. Compliance and voluntary mechanism is one of the parameter, but there is also a parameter of a permanence. Permanence is, we are talking about carbon credits where X ton of carbon we have removed from the atmosphere and store in a technologies like agroforestry, interventions like agroforestry, soil carbon, biochar, different kind of interventions. But we have to determine their permanence, that if we have removed this carbon molecule from the atmosphere and store in the form of a tree, for how long period? Longer the period, higher the price. If we have till the time that particular tree will remain on this earth, which is a typical life of 50 years, 100 years when we are talking about horticulture species. So the durability of that credit is 50 to 60, 70 or 80 years based on the tree species, and also determining on the pricing, that their pricing will be calculated. But if we have stored the carbon in the form of a biochar, which is a more stable form of carbon, that give a longevity or durability of 100 years plus 200, 200, 300 years, then the pricing of carbon will going to be appreciated, and it will able to fetch better pricing. If we talk about any other chemical engineering reactions, which we called enhanced rock weathering, which is a recent concept, and very little work has been done so far in India. They are claiming that the carbon is going to store for 1,000 years. Then the carbon pricings will be much higher. So what type of interventions determining the revenue and the costing? What type of segment, it is a compliance market or a voluntary market, will going to address. Financial additionality parameter is the activity which we are doing is only sole purpose is to generate carbon credits, or their sole purpose is doing certain additional business revenue, whereas carbon credit is becoming a byproduct. If carbon credits becoming a byproduct and that activity anyways happen to be there, those projects are scoring less on financial additionality. So these were, I think, the questions towards cost, revenue, and market uncertainty. Coming to what type of policies, regulation, and governance exist, how Indian carbon market, how DRE can access. So in the current situation, Indian government has launched a carbon credit trading scheme, and this carbon credit trading scheme has two categories. The category one is a compliance market, where they have put certain targets. We are talking about only the Indian geography, where the buyer and seller remain in India. If we are talking about the Indian carbon market guidelines, so under Indian carbon markets, two categories: one is voluntary, another is compliance. The compliance market right now is where certain industries, steel, cement, has received the targets by the government that you cannot emit more than threshold emissions per ton of their commodity they are producing. If they are producing steel, cement, their carbon emissions per ton of steel should be this much. So that's government has communicated to them. Now these organizations start venturing in the process where they are changing their technology, changing their practices to reduce their carbon emissions and generating similar amount of capacity of their business, commodity, whatever they are into. During this process, if they are able to reduce the carbon emissions from the benchmark, they are eligible to receive certain credits. So that's how the compliance market is right now under development, where certain corporates are going to overachieve their targets and receive credits, and whereas certain corporates will receive a deficit with their target, so they are going to purchase the credits from the market which is being generated by the other corporates. So access of MSME, access of DRE sector in the Indian carbon markets compliance system right now is very minimal. So that's where the regulations are. But the second category of Indian carbon market is voluntary offset mechanism, in which they have categorized 8 sections, in which rural development, afforestation, energy efficiency, renewable energy, all those parameters has been highlighted becoming the eligible sector. So MSME and DRE segments can definitely apply their projects under the Indian carbon market regulations, and the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has started receiving the applications. But there is one challenge there. The demand of these Indian carbon market credits, which is of voluntary in nature, is right now that there is no demand in the international market, because international buyers are demanding for international certifications like gold standard Vera, whereas Indian carbon market, which is being managed by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, is parallel certification system to gold standard and Vera. So it is less in demand right now. Projects can generate carbon credits, but what is the price we can expect in the Indian carbon markets if we are dealing with voluntary ruling? That is not very clear as of now. And but this is one of the opportunity where DRE can domestically generate carbon credits at a lower cost if we are comparing with any international carbon market guidelines. There will be decent provisioning of access by the smallholder farmers. The scale of the project, if small, that can also attract, but the revenue piece right now is not mature to answer all the questions that how much pricing and feasibility of these projects going to look like. Hopefully next 2-3 quarters we will have a better understanding of this process. Last but not the least is, I think, that is, yeah, so technical process and methodologies. That lot of questions are how we are going to monitor, how we are going to provide data integrity, because this is also one of the major challenge in the carbon markets, that the credits which are coming are having a problem of double accounting. If we are talking about a cook stove project which also generate carbon credits, whether this cook stove, uh, if somebody is claiming 10,000 cook stove projects, these cook stoves are actually being distributed or not. So those were the challenges which uh, forces the DMRV's guidelines to further evolve. A lot of companies start putting their efforts on digitalizing the data sets, that how we are connected our data sets with the local server and to the international servers. Usage of AI and blockchain also start coming into the picture. So in the current setup, electric cook stoves is one of the category where digital MRV is already established. But when we are talking about biomass based cook stoves, that piece is still under development. When we talk about microgrids, if they are connected with the certain servers and providing the supply of electricity or a consumption at a instant, in a real time basis, though there also the digital MRV systems are already established and receive decent amount of you can say decent amount of demand of such projects. The projects which are able to monitor all their impacts digitally going to fetch better pricing, uh, and also address a lot of questions on the data integrity. Having this in the background, still no carbon certification process has mandated these DMRV processes. These DMRV processes where plantation of trees and monitoring remotely is a optional option, and the traditional approach of taking a sample, going to the sites, estimating the growth of the trees, and then populating the data to use for the carbon emission calculations are still going on. And all those MRV process is good to have better robust system, better governance mechanism. But the which DMRV technology is going to be the winner in this category is yet to be seen. And it is also expected right now that DMRV is going to reduce the cost of the monitoring process over a period of time. But in the current landscape, DMRV is a additional cost. So it is actually because you have to execute all the traditional way of monitoring. In parallel, you have to also put a layer of the DMRV, which is right now optional. Uh, Having said that, I think this is it from my side with the topic, but happy to answer if there are more specific and concrete questions within the time frame which we are having.
Jasmeet ji, there are some questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
So 50 lakh as upfront cost for MSME unit is very high. Is there a way to bring it down substantially?
Yes, so definitely 50 lakhs for MSME is high. So there are some provisioning where 10 to, like, you can club couple of MSMEs together. So this cost is more like a cost of certification irrespective of the scale of the project. So when I have explained the standardization and scaling up process, so standardization poses a challenge if one MSME wanted to collaborate with the other 2, 3 other MSMEs, because the nature of application of TRE might change. So that is one of the hindrance that all. So the short answer is, if we can collaborate or find similar other DREs together and then develop a project, then the cost will not going to increase in the same ratio. It can be like two MSMEs or DREs, and the cost might be 55 or 60 lakhs. So very small increment, but it can able to divide it into two setups.
Great. So next question is, how baseline scenario is calculated for agriculture interventions?
So different agriculture interventions depend upon the which type of intervention we are talking about. Taking an example of a soil carbon project, agroforestry project, or I think this question is being asked by Ruchi. Ruchi, do you want to yeah, you are on mute.
Sorry. Thank you for the presentation. So basically, you mentioned about the agroforestry project, that's fine. But for the projects such as you mentioned about the manure, mentioned about the vermicomposting. In that scenario, how we calculate the baseline scenario?
So for in that categories, in the baseline scenario, the intervention is we are switching to a organic farming, where earlier there was a chemical fertilizer. So the amount of chemical which is going into the baseline situation going to be taken to into estimation, that what is the NPK urea we are putting into the soil, what are the soil carbon content in last 3, 4 years, taking the soil samples, that becoming the current level or the baseline situation of soil organic content in the agriculture field. And then we are switching to vermicomposting, manuring, zero tillage, or any other interventions which are scientific way going to increase the carbon content in the soil. So those are the data sets which we have to capture to establish the soil organic carbon in the baseline, and similar data sets we are going to keep on capturing on an annual basis. Parallel to that, on a sampled approach, testing the soil samples and do the estimations. There are DMRV technologies also exist, but it's yet to be proven at a scale.
Okay, okay. Just thank you for this. But just the earlier question, the answer you have mentioned about the 50 lakh amount for MSME. Just want to understand what is the financial gains in that sense. For example, an MSME or a group of MSME is putting up 50 lakhs for the carbon financing and all that stuff. So in that sense, what are the financial gains if we can see maybe in a years of time? But is it making sense to them putting up 50 lakhs upfront as a cost, whether they are gaining from such kind of project and what tenure they can gain? Maybe approximate or assumption based, but I would like to understand if you can provide some answer to that.
So first of all, it's I would not say stick to 50 lakhs. It is always some people ask that what is the cost of developing a project, and that was also so 50 lakhs just to satisfy that there is a number in place, but there are a lot of strings attached to that. MSME is not going to get anything from the 50 lakhs rupees of investment. 50 lakhs rupees is just 50 lakhs or a more money is just a you can say confirmation that this project is legitimate, this project is certified by the agencies, and ensuring that if the MSME follow this part for next 10 years is eligible to receive credits, but no credits are going to be delivered by that particular SME. So it's more like a sunk cost. Every year there will be a cost of monitoring and the scale of implementation which they are categorizing. Some MSMEs might come with a break even in next 3, 4 years, the cost of sunk cost and year on year cost which they are incurring, and some will take more or lesser based on the scale and the intervention. We are talking about methane avoidance, rice cultivation, talking about solar installation. So there are different parameters. So unit economics of carbon credit generation will vary from intervention to intervention, and for that a feasibility assessment is required.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ruchi. Then Shubham is asking, is there any scope that we can leverage carbon credit from food loss and waste post-harvest losses?
We can leverage carbon credit from food loss, and so for food loss, uh, so this is like a methodology which we have to explore, which is already exists, but the lens will be different. This is a waste management project, that if a food is getting diverted, waste food is getting diverted to the landfill, and if we are able to leverage that these waste food is not going to the landfill, it is being channelized and used in the organic or utilized in some other segments, that we have reduced the organic waste from the landfill. So the lens which we are going to apply for these project will be how much organic waste we have diverted to go to the landfill, and each type of waste has their decay value. Based on that, they will going to emit methane and the other kind of carbon greenhouse gas emissions. But theoretically there is a methodology in place, there is a assessment needs to be done if it is, and that particular methodology, some projects are already being under development in the developed nations like Canada and US, where these some food waste app has been launched, and those companies are trying to generate carbon credits out of that process as well.
Okay. So one last question, and then we can go to Sharad sir. Pricing of carbon credit, how to integrate natural calamities in pricing estimation mechanism?
So it's a, I would say it's more like a putting the insurance premium in place. When we structure the commercial negotiations of the pricing that a project will going to deliver certain amount of credits, it take into consideration the force majeure, and based on the commercial negotiation, that the risk of force majeure, which also includes the natural calamities, somebody has planted a 100,000 hectares of a forest in the coastal region and a storm come and everything like wiped out, that particular there are insurance products start coming into the picture. But these projects carry a inherent risk of delivery longevity. So we can there are certain level of buffers which is being kept by certification bodies like Vera. If you are applying for a agriculture project and making a request of 100 credits, you will receive 80 credits. They will keep 20 credits as a buffer to address the forest fire, natural calamities. But 80 credits still carry a risk that you go and commit to a buyer that 80 credits will be delivered and the pricing will be addressed. So one, you can put the strategies of insurance, but there will be a risk with the agriculture projects of under delivery over a period of time. That is the nature of engagement.
Thank you, Jasmeet ji. So I think for such projects, there would already be some bifurcation for such areas where like hilly areas or like coastal areas that you said. So I think those kind of bifurcation would also be there in the projects.
Yes. So when we develop a project, each project is, there is a risk assessment report needs to be submitted. And when I give an example of 100 credits and 20 credits are in buffer, based on the report which we have, risk report which we prepared and submitted, the 20 units will be decided whether it is a high risk, then the 30 buffer will going to be kept by a certification body if it is a lesser risk. So in the risk report, we have to predict the probability of occurring of such events. If such drought, flood, storm, anything coming, what is the probability? And this, our site is coming under high risk, low risk, based on the weather data, based on the previous extreme weather conditions. So all those question and answer and modeling needs to take into consideration in the risk report, and then may come up with a number that 20% or a 30% buffer is justified for our project. So it will be varied for project to project, based in Delhi or based in Odisha or Assam. All have three different categories of buffer and going to receive different values of issuance, irrespective, keeping all the things same.
Right. So I think we can go to Sharad sir, if you can unmute yourself. So
Yeah, hi. I'm not in a position to switch on my video, just have some feedback. Yeah, in any case, Jasmeet, hi, a great, I loved your presentation as well as it clearly shows immense knowledge and immense experience in this space. A couple of questions. One was on the agri side. From your experience, so from the inception, like, wherein like, the baseline part of it, and until the final, the delivery of the credits, like what is the time frame we are talking, like, if for a typical project? One. The second I have question is, I'm not this is on a little yes, this is on a little different note. Say a project gets money, and so what's the whole point then, in sense, like, then are there periodic measurements done? Like, say the first year you get your money, now the second year comes. The second year, again, the money tranche comes, or I'm sorry, the credits arrive, or there needs to be a remeasurement that needs to be done. Again, the payment of the cost involved for the measurements, and who pays for that, and all that. What, can you brief something on that side of things? Thank you.
Okay, just reconfirm, you are referring to agriculture project.
No, the first question and the second question can be taken like together or can be treated separately. The second question can be like independent of any project. It can be an RE project, can be any project.
Sure.
The first
So,
project is specifically on agriculture. The first question is on agriculture.
So the first, the delivery timelines from starting the projects to the first delivery, it really depends upon the interventions. If you're talking about a agriculture agroforestry project, project starts on year one. The first round of credits, very minimal, will coming in year 4 or 5. That's like if everything goes very well as per the plan. So if a agriculture project, we can expect minimal first round of issue. Alternate years you start issuing the credits, because the growth of trees is very much like a S curve. After 10 years you see a spike of credit generation. That is like the timelines we are talking about when we talk about a plantation and a agriculture scale projects. For rice cultivation, things are comparatively better. For a soil carbon is also better, but if you are starting a project on year 0, you can expect at least year 3 or year 4 the first round of credits, and it will keep on coming. And your second question, where you were referring, you receive the money, and the second, so it is, if your first round of credit delivery is on year 3, you will not going to implement all the project on year 1. So year 1, year 2, year 3, more like a capex. It will keep on receiving monies with certain deliverables and timelines, and the investor who is putting the money is conducting the due diligence and third party assessments, not on the credit delivery but on the other aspect, whether the project got registered, how many hectares has been implemented, what type of carbon rights agreement with how many farmers onboarded on the process. Till the time credit delivery period is not triggered, all those process will becoming like a capex, and they keep on receiving the money. And once the project complete their total scale, then everything is you can say triggered towards the credit delivery, which a project developer who is receiving the money has to submit a year on year schedule, that how many credits on year 3 and year 5 and year 7, and that's the investor who is giving the money will keep on monitoring on a regular basis.
Just one add-on, and I'll end there. Now the thing is, suppose what happens is, now suppose I grow my crop, and suppose this is a rice plantation, and I grow my crop, and I accumulate my credits, and say I get the money for the credit. Now supposing and there's this pattern that develops for the crop itself. I somehow say abandon the whole thing and say, is there a possibility of like, I can always cheat, right? I mean, if there is no monitoring involved in this. So, that's where I'm coming from. So, yeah, maybe I might not have understood things, but could you please help me?
So monitoring is definitely involved in the thing. So for an example, if somebody has given a geo coordinates of a particular land parcel, whether it's a rice, soil, tree, there are technologies in place which can monitor that particular land parcel through satellite and estimates the accuracy levels can be contested, but those monitoring will be in place. And if a farmer is not doing what they are reporting, it will going to come out in their assessments. For an example, in rice cultivation, if they have changed the practices, the carbon which is stored in the soil start changing over a period of time. If there is a trees, then there is a cover of vegetation, which if it is removed, then it can be easily monitored. And if there is a change of practice of instead of rice cultivation going to something else where the soil carbon start depleting, it can be also verified through the soil sample test, which is going to be captured by the agency who is receiving the money and responsible for monitoring for that particular region. So there are different check and balances. It's not foolproof, but we are moving our MRV in that direction because it is being questioned by many buyers in the past that the reports, the deliverables which you are submitting is not of high quality. So we are moving and fixing those gaps. So chances of you can say cheat will be minimal. And second is it's also inclusive. Farmer is also declaring, giving and signing that I am doing this and will going to follow. If there is a grievance, they are dropping out, then they will not going to be part of the system and not going to receive the incentives.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmeet ji. So we have one question from Salil. Can an Indian renewable energy company leverage Article 6.4 for raising carbon finance directly as an individual entity? If yes, how?
So answer is no. So renewable energy company cannot access as of now in current landscape that these projects are financially viable on their own.
Okay. And I think we'll take the last person, hands up. Here is Prashant RH. Can you please unmute and
Yeah, hi all. Hi Jasmeet ji. Thanks for the presentation. So my question is, so when it comes to carbon credits and so we are basically into solar-based cold rooms, and our target audience is farmers, farmers, FPOs, SAGs. Currently, the scenario is the acceptance for cooling solutions at the farm gate is very low, or it might be because of the pricing which the component is. So with these carbon credits, we can definitely encourage farmers or the farmer producing organizations to purchase these infrastructure at their farm gate, and they'll be encouraged to use this, even considering food loss or food wastages, and also if they can get carbon credits on yearly basis or whatever it is, like if they can get it on a monetary terms, that would be very helpful for them to run these kind of infrastructures and also solve their problems at a post harvest level. So is there any possibility for them to get these things directly?
Theoretically, yes. Practically, we are talking about. I'm just giving example of solar irrigation pump, which is very back in my mind, like the calculations for this cold storage. We need to do certain assessment. We are talking about installing a soil irrigation pumping in a area, and that will going to cost around 1.5 to 2 lakhs rupees. If we say carbon is going to contribute how much diesel this pump has saved, that we when we done our assessment in a good scenario, it contribute 5,000 10,000 rupees. So this is not going to be a decision maker for a farmer or for a company, whether the carbon credits are coming or not, because it is contributing to 5 to 10% of the total financial incentive. So that's the assessment for the solar irrigation pumping. But now the catch is there is some subsidies, those are also contributing, and then make a business case. Same is applied to the cold storage. Scaling and standardization, I'm again emphasizing on these two part, that if we say we are not talking about 100 storage cold storage, we are talking about 10,000 50,000, that scale becoming feasible to justify the cost of certification expenses and the data sets. The more you diversified, more difficulty in getting the data sets from the different FPOs, and that's one of the biggest challenge why DREs are not able to access the carbon markets, which is still 20 years old. So that's, I would say, I stop here without concluding this is possible or not, because this need further deliberation. Theoretically, yes. Practically, there are challenges which need to be addressed.
Got it. Definitely. Thanks for the clarification.
Sure.
Great. Thank you all. I think we are already 12 minutes or more. I mean, we have exceeded. If there are more questions, please feel free to reach out to us or to Jasmeet ji himself. And I think we will be fine to take your questions or divert the questions to Jasmeet ji. So thank you, Jasmeet ji, for your presentation, for sharing all the questions with us. And Priya ma'am, would you like to say a few words, or we will end it here?
Yeah, I think it's already a bit late, so we can end it here. But thank you very much, Jasmeet, for clearly spelling out and answering several of the queries which are quite commonly being raised, and clearing some of the confusions. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Jasmeet ji.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll keep in touch. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.